Okay, so in this video we're looking at, or trying to answer the question, is codependency an addiction? Please keep in mind that everything I say here is simply my personal experience and opinion. I'm not an expert in the field of addiction or codependency. The purpose is for the listener to look at codependency from a different perspective. This is all just food for thought. So, an alcoholic does not satisfy his need for alcohol by drinking. An addict doesn't satisfy his need for drugs by using them. A compulsive gambler doesn't satisfy his need to gamble by gambling. Winning or losing makes no difference. An overeater doesn't satisfy his phantom appetite by eating. And a sex addict doesn't satisfy his obsession for sex by having sex. So I could go on, but I think you can see the pattern, that the hallmark of any addiction is when the thing one desires does not satisfy the need for it. Right? Alcohol does not satisfy the alcoholic's desire for alcohol. In fact, it does the exact opposite. It increases it, which creates a vicious cycle that leads to unmanageability. Because the dependent person needs this thing, just has to have this thing. And when he has it, the desire for it only increases. So he must have it again and again. Addictions can never be satisfied by acting them out. A non-alcoholic may desire to have a beer or a glass of wine at dinner, and when he has it, the need is satisfied. The same is not true for the alcoholic. So what about codependency? I've heard people describe codependency as a form of addiction, that alcoholics are addicted to alcohol and the codependent is addicted to the alcoholic. Well, I don't think codependency is a straight-up addiction. There are addictive components to it. Allow me to explain. So one of the hallmarks of codependency is the desire to control. Generally, one's qualifier, the person who brings one into program. However, for a true codependent, the need to control is never satisfied by attempting to control. Even when the qualifier is sober, the codependent often continues to act out their need to control, to manage their qualifier's recovery. It's as if codependents often don't have an off switch for their desire to control, to make things right as we think they ought to be. And when you get right down to it, the need to control often goes far beyond one's qualifier, yes or no. I see the control as a process that starts with judging, which is based on a belief that I know what is best for everyone. This leads to obsessing about controlling, which often leads to actively attempting to control, which at best is an illusion of control. However, even if I don't take the final step, obsessing about control makes my life just as unmanageable as actively trying to control. And the need is never satisfied. So I think this meets the definition for an addiction. In fact, so does each component of the process I outlined. I can become addicted to thinking I know what's best for everyone. I can become addicted to judging. Thinking I'm right and being judgmental both make me feel superior. So it's easy to see how that can become addictive. Obsessing about control also becomes an addiction. I can spend hours fantasizing about control, which not only makes me feel powerful, it helps me avoid my own feelings of fear, shame, guilt, etc. The actual attempt to control is merely the tip of the dysfunctional iceberg, and the resulting chaos, which inevitably results, causes me to double down on my efforts to control. My desire to control cannot be satisfied by acting out my need to control, which confirms to me that it is a form of addiction. What about the experience of an adult child of alcoholic? Well, ACAs are defined by the laundry list, 14 traits of an adult child. Many of these, in my opinion, also fit the description of addiction. Trait 8 is a no-brainer. We became addicted to excitement, which implies that the need for excitement is not satisfied by excitement. We always need more. Trait 1 starts with we became isolated. So the question becomes, does isolating satisfy the need to isolate? For me, the answer is no. Trait 2 starts with we became approval seekers. So the question is, does getting approval satisfy the need for approval? Or does the dopamine hit from getting someone's approval only fuel the need for more approval? Then there's trait 13, which says we became para-alcoholics and took on the characteristics of alcoholism. Took on the characteristics of alcoholism, which is an addiction. For a deeper dive into what para-alcoholic means, watch my video titled, What is Codependency? I'll put the link below in the description. Now, I'm not saying that codependency and the 14 traits of ACA are straight up addictions. I'm just saying that some of the behavior patterns fit the description of addiction, which is maybe why Al-Anon and ACA use the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe there are more similarities between us than there are differences. I think the more ways you can look at something, the better you understand it, which brings me to the point of all of this, which is to show that the solution to all addiction is not to attempt directly to satisfy the need. An alcoholic cannot satisfy his desire for alcohol by drinking. A codependent cannot satisfy his desire to control by controlling. And an ACA cannot satisfy his need to people please by pleasing people. The solution is to stop doing these things long enough to work on the spiritual malady, which is the foundation of all dis-ease. And this is done by getting a sponsor and working the 12-step recovery programs. Step 1 gets you to stop acting out the addiction. Steps 2 through 12 address the spiritual malady. I'm Robbie Bobby. Thank you for listening. And remember, it works if you work it, so work it, you're worth it. And keep coming back.